Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. We are on episode 144. I'm H.A. Conrad, here as always with my intrepid and marvelous fatherly co-host, Stuart Tiffin.
Well, feeling the love today, thanks.
And today we have a couple of news items, but then we're going to be jumping into our review of Fear the Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 3. And I don't really know how to say the title of the episode. Is it Teotihuacan?
Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan. And I'm actually looking forward to chatting about this one with you. So, we'll take it from there. But do you want to hop into the news first, Mr. Tiffin?
Unlike usually, H.A. tends not to enjoy talking to me about zombie stuff. That's not true.
No, just Fear the Walking Dead stuff. I just find it a slog. However, I may be changing my tune a bit this week.
Okay.
But.
Well, let's see. But news. First up, there's a few things actually that I need to catch up on. Last time I should have mentioned the Dungeons and Dragons Stream of Annihilation. They did this huge Twitch event. Live stream for 2 days, 12 hours each day at the beginning of June, when they announced the new module coming out for Dungeons & Dragons called the Tomb of Annihilation, introducing a new area in the Forgotten Realms map. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. But they're introducing a land called Chult, which is inhabited by giant undead dinosaurs that spread
awesome.
Zombies. So apparently there's one mechanic where these giant T-Rexes will eat a living creature and then spit it out, and that creature is now a zombie. And so that's it's totally over the top. It's totally crazy. And I'm sure it doesn't happen all the time, but that is one mechanic of spreading the undead disease, which is more magical in D&D, less the zombies that we know and love. But I thought that was pretty cool. And there's going to be a lot of undead emphasis in Chult and in this module that's coming out this fall for D&D.
Cool. Are the dinosaurs actually undead themselves, or are they just generators of undead sort of villains in this scenario?
Well, they're both. They are. Well,
okay.
Sorry, they are. They are also alive dinosaurs.
Okay,
but some of them have been turned undead, and because of the nature of the transmission, which is kind of similar to the way we understand it, a bite or death by zombie creates another zombie, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's how they this giant undead T-Rex will eat a person, spit it out, and then they've made another zombie, and it's just like a machine.
I really love this idea. This is great.
Yeah, so that's going to be pretty cool. I think there'll be some interesting content coming out of that module.
Nice.
Second thing is, and more related to the news item that is coming up, is that E3, I think, just wrapped up this week. So there's a lot of new footage for video games that are coming out in the next year or two. And there's a couple of big zombie titles coming out, both of which I think we've talked about before. The Last Day, is it called? Or Days Gone By? That one it's for PlayStation, which I don't have, so I'll probably never get to play it. I really kind of hate exclusive titles like that, but they released more footage of that, and it looked pretty cool. I don't know if you've seen any of it, H.A.
I've seen a bit, but I don't know if I checked out the most recent piece that you put up. But yeah,
it's more of the motorcycle gang, survivalists in the zombie apocalypse type stuff. But it does look really pretty. It looks like it's going to be a good game. And then State of Decay 2 trailer was shown, which honestly doesn't show a lot of gameplay. It's more it's in engine, which is nice. So they're not showing you graphics that you're not going to get in the game, but it doesn't really show you specifically how you're going to play. It's more of a high level feature type video. So it's working together, decisions that change the dynamics of your group, where you're going to hole up, how you build up your hole up site. I mean, the first game was really good. It just had some late game issues, it got kind of drudgery oriented. And I've never really liked the fact that it has hero zombies like bloaters and screamers and the ferals, which are really fast and can tear your guys apart in 2 seconds. Those, unfortunately, are still going to be in the game. I'm just hoping that the rest of the game is going to be more compelling based on just the update. Plus, they're going to be introducing co-op. So
Ah.
If you get a PC or an Xbox HA, we could play State of Decay 2 together.
All right. Well, let's see. Let's see if that happens. As you know, I have a little bit of an addictive tendency when it comes to games, so I tend to try to stay away from them. Otherwise, I get sucked in and spend all my time doing that kind of stuff. So
You have so much free time.
I know, right? So there's that. But that actually sounds interesting. I suspect you would totally kick my ass, though.
No, it's co-op. We'd be working together.
Even so, I feel like you would be at a disadvantage with me as your teammate in said game. But let's see what happens. All right. Next up is a little bit of a little bit of an insight from Michael. Is it Kudlitz or Cudlitz?
I think it's Cudlitz.
I just like Kudlitz. It sounds like cuddly. I don't know. Anyway, he as people know, played Abraham on The Walking Dead, and had an interview where he mentioned why a crossover between Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead wouldn't work. His take is that Fear the Walking Dead is much more of a realistic take somehow, and The Walking Dead is more riffing off the graphic novel and is just more intense and heightened and a little bit more I don't know, I don't want to say non-realistic, but a little bit more over the top for that reason. What do you think about this? Because I don't know that I necessarily agree.
I think he has a point, but at the same time, Abraham was the most comic book type character. Yeah. Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita, when they were all introduced, were all just like kind of ridiculous. Rosita has been grounded a lot since then. Abraham never really did get grounded. No. And Eugene also has never really come down to earth. He's always been a bigger than normal kind of person.
True.
So for Cudlitz to have that impression, I think is not weird. It's just that he lived in this, like, in the body of this insanely over the top person. So I could see why he would have that impression. But
I can see that, but I also think that there would be room for that kind of a crossover. Not that I necessarily want one, and of course we talked a little bit, and we have talked a little bit about some of the potential fan theories out there regarding Madison and the idea that there is some kind of synergy between the show. There is a crossover or there is a relation. I don't know that they'll ever do anything with that, but I feel like if they did that, it would have to be done in a very specific way and not make it completely ridiculous and cheesy. But I feel like at some point they're going to feel like they have to do that, but maybe I'm wrong.
You think they're going to have to cross over?
I feel like there's some, I don't know. I feel like there's something with the creators of the show where they are going to feel like they have to do it for the fans somehow, or they have to do it to have some kind of, like, I don't know. Maybe it won't be a direct character crossover, but I feel like they're laying out some little Easter eggs, perhaps in preparation for that kind of thing.
While the fanboy in me wants to agree with you, I think this show, the spinoff, is going to die on the vine before they even get a chance.
Yeah, but we keep saying that, and it's already been renewed for another season. Yeah. And so
but
I don't know that that's
now things are
necessarily
changing
true.
with Dave Erickson leaving the show. Things are changing. There was also an interview with Alicia Denham. Is that her name? Debenham? Something?
Yeah,
Whoever,
it's a hard...
The chick who plays Alicia, who was saying that she was excited to see what the new showrunner was going to bring to the show. Right. The article I was reading tried to make it into... This comicbooks.com or Cinema Blend. Their headline is like how one Fear the Walking Dead actor feels about losing their showrunner, and they were trying to make you think it was going to be some sort of
negative thing,
bomb they were going to drop, and no, she's just like, look, he's going to go on and do great things, and I'm just excited to see what the next person brings. Yeah, sure, okay, fine. It's just diplomatic and kind of boring.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to see them try and bring it together, but then. They've already dropped the ball, too, with the damn Flight 467. Was it 467?
Yeah.
Where the hell did Alex go?
Yeah, I don't know. And it sort of it bummed me out, like what they did with that, even though I was very excited to see those characters. I feel like they're going to bring that back somehow, but
Well, maybe they will, because this episode of Fear the Walking Dead that we're going to talk about also does some very strange. The end of the episode has some very strange decision making in terms of characters and presenting them.
Yes, it does. So,
but before we get to that,
we have one more news item. Sorry.
Yes.
Glenn Close, who, we saw her in Girl with All the Gifts, or She Who Brings Gifts, whatever you want to call that particular film. And she is now jumping into, is this a series? It seems like it is. It's a pilot for a series called Sea Oak. And she is going to be playing this character who is a disgruntled aunt that comes back from the dead to terrorize and torture her relatives. She's playing a character named Aunt Bernie, and apparently in life, Bernie is a little bit of a meek and mild kind of character, and is so dissatisfied with death that she has to come back and give her family some comeuppance, I guess, and revenge. And this is, we don't know, I haven't seen too much about this particular series. It's another Amazon pilot, and we've seen what's happened with some of these, even with a good cast. This is all written by George Saunders, the novelist, and so I think we're gonna... I don't know. Amazon tends to do this stuff where they'll develop these pilots and kind of throw them out there and see what sticks. So I don't know what's going to happen with this one, but I'm kind of interested to see it. Glenn Close, I love, so I can't imagine she'd associate herself with something terrible. But I guess time shall tell. I think it's interesting that she's associating herself with these kinds of things, but. And I imagine it's definitely a comedy, so who knows what legs this will have in terms of an actual series. But we did see the Santa Clarita Diet with Netflix, that they just did the whole thing, so we'll see what happens with this Amazon series.
Yeah, I guess we will. I'm not psyched. I don't like the idea of another zombie comedy. There's enough of those out there right now.
There are, but I don't know. I really like her, and she hasn't really done a ton of television series, especially lately. She did Damages, and that was a huge success. So this gives me a little bit of hope. Maybe this will be a take on the zombie comedy series that you can even deal with. So we'll see. All right.
I guess we will.
No comment from Mr. Tiffin. So I'm ready to hop into this review. So let's go. Teotihuacan, or Teotihuacan, is an acronym for the end of the world as we know it.
Apparently it's commonly used in survivalist circles.
It apparently is. I didn't know this. This is terrible until I saw this and I was looking it up, and I'm like, oh, so they went with the REM song acronym. But
I could have sworn this was like a Native American word.
I thought so too, but then I felt really silly when I actually realized what it was. I don't really watch the whole doomsday prepper kind of thing, and this is definitely along the lines of that community. The open of this episode was found footage of our good friend Mr. Otto, with his seemingly angelic and wonderful family, talking about, talking about survival and how to, basically giving a how-to guide, step-by-step how-to guide, what to do to prepare for the apocalypse. And, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you've ever, there is something like this associated with the Mormon religion, where they do this basically as part of their whole religion, where they and there's stores and things like that prep people for this, where they just have all the supplies and things like that.
But you have to keep a year's worth of food in your house.
Yeah, but it's a little bit more than a year's worth. I think it's 5. But it's it's sort of in keeping with this whole attitude, and it sounds a little bit like what Jeremiah Addo is talking about. His children, Jake and Troy, make an appearance in this, as well as his wife, who we have not seen before. And it's a little bit of it's very infomercially and a little culty, but it is also very positive. It's talking about make the new world what you want it to be. This doesn't have to be a disaster. You can build something wonderful and bright and that kind of thing. And it's also very there's scenes and clips about the downfall of the American democracy and the experiment, and that greed and politicians and foreign leaders and all these horrible people are really going to be the cause of the downfall. And so it's definitely an outreach to every man. This is where it's coming from. There's definitely also an anti-immigrant vein in this video, which we haven't yet seen outright, though we've seen a little bit in the reaction of the community to Luciana, and definitely in how Troy and some of the others were acting towards Travis. So, but this is the first sort of confirmation that we have seen directly from Mr. Otto. So this is giving us a little bit of an insight into that. So what did you think about this open? I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of an interesting way to do it. I liked that they inserted this in here because we don't necessarily know that Madison and her group is going to see this. So that's kind of an interesting thing, that the audience knows something that they don't.
Yeah, I had seen some of this footage around the internet already, and I wasn't sure if it was part of a just an extra, like a web extra. But I really like the fact that they went back and did these like in definite 90s style VHS. Yep. And I like the writing actually of his monologue during it. The line, the feckless fiddle while America burns, and wake up what was it, like, the Patriots, this is the end of the world as we know it, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or no, the great American experiment has failed. I enjoyed the way he was making his argument, even though it's all very depressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. And then that wasn't the end of the cold open, because then we go right to the wake for Charlene, which starts off with a nice memory and then gets, as you were saying, there's a strong current of xenophobia inside the ranch. Or at least it's strong enough that it is said out loud in front of other people, even though there are Jakes around who say, or no, and Maddie says it later, like, most people don't mind that we're here. The fact that Charlene's mom, or whoever it is making the eulogy, very clearly says Charlene was killed because she was taking care of the unprepared, mm-hmm. which actually just isn't true.
No. Because she was coming back from a mission. I mean, she was coming back from a mission that they had set out as part of this community to refuel and to get supplies from that base. So that wasn't why. And, it's interesting because Jake has implied that he has a lot of pull in this community, and he continues to say certain things about the community that are clearly not true. Some of the things like, oh, we're not like Troy. Troy, if, they don't know that Troy's doing these things, we send Troy out here because Troy is not doing what he's not what the community is about. But we're seeing with some of the statements from different members of the community that isn't necessarily true. And Maddie does respond to this and stands up, and she does a very good job, I think, at basically being humble and grateful, and also making sure that it hits home that they have lost people too, and mentions Travis by name. I noticed her southern accent came out here in full force, and my thought is that it was completely deliberate in a way to portray them as being, non-threatening, or I don't want to say down home, but that's kind of, or again, part of the common people that maybe this community has gathered around them. Did you catch that as well?
Well, survivalists tend not to be from Los Angeles, so yeah, I think
Yeah.
she's just trying to make it seem like they're not these urban
Right.
lightweights that Jeremiah seems to think that they are.
Right. And so there is that. I did find that that was kind of interesting. There's a lot of outcry because they want answers about who attacked the helicopter. So I found that a little bit weird that they were kind of blaming things on Maddie when clearly another group had attacked the helicopter, you know. And so
that's a separate. It does understand. That's a separate question. That's when Vernon gets up and is like, he interrupts Jake talking at a wake and says, "Yeah, that's great, and she deserves her sadness, but it's time to talk about the helicopter." It's like, what? No,
Yeah.
wait, just goddamn, dude. But this episode does a lot to undermine Jake's moderate nature.
Yep.
He is introduced as a moderate, and his moderate approach saves lives in the first episode where we meet him. And now it seems, as you were saying earlier, that moderates don't do well in The Walking Dead, and frankly, moderates don't do well today in today's America and our political system. So it's just reflecting the reality of right now, and on this show where we've always seen that moderates die first. Like, frankly, Jake is basically on a very short string. I assume it's going to be Troy who kills him or gets him killed. That's my prophecy right now.
I would agree with you, especially based upon how things unfold in this episode with regard to things that Jake says, but also based upon his interaction with Troy and then Troy's interactions with others during this episode. So there's that, you know.
And it also in that wake scene, so Jeremiah's talking sense. Vernon's like, no, we want action. Or he says, I don't care about what you're saying, Jake. I'm going to go to your old man. Jeremiah says, hey, dude, we're doing what we need to do. And then Troy says some populist BS, like, we're going to go to war. We're going to take action. We're going to get revenge, which gets a lot of people agreeing with him. And I'm like, well, yeah, this is a total analogy for American politics.
Yeah, a little too heavy-handed, no? I thought.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, it's I don't know. To me, no, it's not that heavy-handed, but it's clear what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw Wonder Woman yesterday, so that is heavy-handed.
Oh, yeah, it is.
This is like painting with a really tiny brush by comparison. So.
Yeah, that is one of the issues I had with that film. But anyway, we've got that stuff going on, and then there's some immediate interaction in the mess hall between Maddie and Alicia, and one of the men in there is like, he basically calls them freeloaders, and then
based on what? They've been there one day. Who would you like? What?
The other thing I find interesting about this is that, you know, Jeremiah Otto is the leader of this community, and it feels like he's done some things to bring them in. I don't know. I mean, it's and so I guess to me it's interesting to see some of this very vocal sort of dissension. Or dissent rather, in the ranks here, because he's not telling them what to think of people, which I think is fine. But he's certainly one of the leaders of the community, so you got to wonder if some of this narrative is coming from him. But anyway, we've got that going on, and then one of the other ranchers, Gretchen, is like, kind of cuts in and introduces herself as friendly and immediately brings up Bible camp to Alicia, and Alicia has definitely the reaction I probably would have to said invitation, and Madison kind of pushes her to accept it because they're trying to fit in here for a little while anyway.
And get intel.
But yeah, I think Alicia says something like she's Jewish, and still Gretchen will not take no for an answer. And I feel for Alicia here, I really do.
There's a couple scenes in this episode with Lucy in the hospital tent. I feel like they're just trying to shoehorn her in there to keep her relevant, but there's nothing she could do. All she does is say, like, I want to get out of here. And I guess these scenes are good for, at least this scene is good for showing that Nick is kind of conflicted about going back outside, also about like whether or not he should have killed Troy. And at least Lucy has the reaction of, that would not have had a good outcome for any of us.
Right. I agree with you. It did feel like she was kind of like stapled into these episodes with no real role other than just that, first of all, she's recovering from her injury, so there's no way Nick can leave while she's recovering, because there's no way he's going to leave her there. But also it's interesting because Nick's very much like, oh yeah, we're going to get out of here as soon as you're better. And Madison doesn't really give her an answer when she says something like, oh, thanks for waiting for me to get better so we can get out of here. And Maddie like is just like, well, Travis died to get us here, so we should be trying to stay here. And it's interesting because Maddie and I think also Alicia kind of have this attitude where it's like, okay, every place like this is going to have some drawbacks, but this place seems to have fewer than others. So I don't know, or at least they're not feeling them yet, or they're seeing them in a different light than they've seen before, and they want to survive and they want to feel safe, and I guess they do here. But there is a lot of weirdness going on in this community, which is like, there's a lot of signs that there's lots of kind of creepy, culty things happening.
At least her reaction to the dicks is like, we'll win them over. And she stopped talking like she was in the last episode about taking this place over.
Doesn't necessarily mean that it... Yeah. I think she is definitely gathering some information, so I don't know that that's necessarily off the table, but she's not talking about it as much in this episode.
I don't want to even hear her say that, because it was it's so unlikely to work. And yeah, hearts and minds is the way to go when you join a community of... Well, if Alexandria has 54, this place probably has 1,000 people in it, because we've seen 30 on screen or so. But yeah, so I'm just glad to hear her kind of soften her approach a little bit. And it's, I guess the dick comments that happen early in this episode also prompt Nick and Maddie to do things later on in the episode, which are unlike... It's kind of the stuff that we wouldn't necessarily see Rick's group do, which is like volunteer for stuff and pitch in, but that's definitely what they feel like they need to do, and it's also kind of what Jeremiah tells her later in the episode that she needs to do.
Yeah. And yeah, that's true. We've also got Troy definitely featured prominently in this episode, and all of a sudden his eye is fine. I really don't think this is what his eye would look like had he been through an injury that we saw Madison with the spoon. I just don't think this would be healed quite as quickly. A little bit of time has passed, but I don't think enough to take... I mean, it basically just looks like he has a black eye. Yeah. It does not look all that terrible.
It's looking crazy. He had a spoon in his eye yesterday. Today,
all
fine.
Good. But the interesting, Troy is definitely continuing his sort of strange interactions with Maddie. He pops up in their trailer, and I don't think it's a mistake that he's in Nick's bed. There is a weird dynamic between him and Maddie. He keeps saying things like he chose her but didn't choose Nick. And Maddie's just like, yeah, no. And she's got like a weird dynamic with him. She's putting on her guidance counselor hat, which Troy calls her on. But he's dangerous, and she knows it, and, takes steps to try to neutralize him a little bit, and making sure his dad knows about it, making sure Jake knows about it. Though Jake seems a lot more concerned than Jeremiah does. And
I think this is all a waste of time. I think there's no talking Troy out of being a psycho.
He's a psycho, right? So, and I think, and that's the thing. I think she knows it. So I don't know what she thinks she's going to do by trying to leash him, as she says to Jeremiah. Like, I don't think Jeremiah has any control over him, nor does Jake. And despite even with their interactions with them, do you get the sense, I always get the sense of their interactions with Troy, anytime they're trying to sort of tell him to back down, his reaction is kind of like, okay, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, but I'm still psycho. Well, like there's no
Jake Jake goes up to him and he's like, well, I won't be able to protect you anymore. Or, what if this ranch finds out what you are? And he's like, dude, they're totally into me now.
Yeah.
Basically. So yeah, that is to me the total death knell of Jake. He doesn't have long to live on this show.
I think so too.
And I wish it wasn't that clear.
Me too. I wish it wasn't so heavy-handed in terms of that, and it really did feel like it was in this whole episode. And there was also a lot of interesting interactions between Maddie and Jeremiah that didn't completely make sense to me. Jeremiah had there's a couple of points, but especially in the first sort of one-on-one where Jeremiah and Maddie are talking, where he keeps saying that she's not a likable person.
Yeah,
where
that was really harsh.
It was harsh, but it was also like, where's he getting the information from? Even if it's from...
He's had like 3 conversations with her, and she hasn't been super nice. She doesn't go out of her way to be likable. She considers it's clear that she doesn't think small talk, and being like a Southern Belle charm type school lady is something that she needs to do in this world, and that's accurate. But maybe he seems to think that she needs to.
Maybe, but there's also, he knows that she's lost her partner, her husband. He knows she's lost Travis.
Yeah.
And he, we all know that, at this point we don't know, but we find out later that, he's lost his wife too, or wives rather, which is interesting. And then he makes a comment that he stopped getting married or whatever. It's kind of like, what does that mean? And very culty feeling. I was getting some Big Love vibes off of this whole community, but we'll see if that plays out. And he says all these things like, that she's got, basically it's on her that she's got to become likable. He can't pave the way for her in this community, and that's a fair point. And if you've got everybody in the community, you can't just be saying, hey, you guys have to like Madison. I do think he could probably make it a little easier on her, but he's choosing to let her forge her own path. And I think in some ways that's kind of what you'd have to do to become an insider when you've been an outsider. And then she gets to watch all these videos of, these televised, well, it's kind of forced to learn about their culture, as Jake says. And Jake assures her that, he's going to take care of Troy. We all don't believe him, though. And we definitely see in these videos the ugly side of the Otto family. And, it's interesting that they've included into the library, and, basically Jeremiah catches her watching it, or comes upon her watching one particular video that he admits he's not at his finest. Like, he's being verbally abusive and a little bit rough with his kids. And his wife and he clearly don't have a good relationship, so all is not as it appears. Though there is some indication that part of what drives him and part of what is driving this community is this redemption, or the mistakes and missteps he's made, and he's supposedly a better person. I don't know. I think we need to find out more about that. And he shows Maddie all of the prep and the pantry and all the stuff he has done. Yeah. So that's interesting, because that shows some amount of trust, at least with her, to show her what they have.
Definitely.
Because it's weapons, it's food, it's lots of stuff.
I really enjoyed Dayton Callie's opportunity that he had in this episode to show kind of his dick side, which is only shown in the VHS. We really haven't. What we've seen of him so far is that he is also a statesman now. Like, he's much more balanced than he was, as we saw in the outtakes. Mm-hmm. And he's also kind of vulnerable.
Yep.
Especially when he finds Maddie watching those tapes, and he's like, "Oh gosh, I used to be kind of a dick." Yep. And it's nice to see that he's a complex character, and because Dayton Callie is definitely capable of playing someone like that, and so I enjoyed that he got that chance.
I agree, and I like that when he sees her watching the tapes, he doesn't make excuses for it. He owns it, and so there is a level of, you can see there's a level of not necessarily trust, but there is a level of honesty in between him and Maddie that seems to be building there. I don't know where it will go, but it's interesting that he's let her in enough to see that side too, and to discuss it. And he talks about his alcoholic wife, and Maddie lets him in on stuff about her family too, about her dad and about Nick. And that is an admission that I was interested. I thought it was interesting that she told him about that, because she knows that Nick is not the most popular person in this community, and that she had to kind of, I don't want to say force him in, but it is to basically own up to that weakness. And to somebody like Jeremiah, I think is showing that she must have some amount of trust there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what were your thoughts? I thought it was very interesting that she decided to do that, because you would think that she might keep that close, but I think she's trying to show some parallel in some way that she understands about Troy. Or maybe she's just figuring out how to manipulate the autos. And it does seem like that towards the end of this episode. But
yeah, there's a really weird scene at the very end. But first, I think we really need to talk about Christ Risen.
Oh, God. Okay. Sure.
So this is the band that Gretchen invites, band/Bible study group that Gretchen invites Alicia to. And kind of at the beginning of this night of I don't know, things that people are doing. It's a trifold story, right? You've got Nick goes on a boar hunt. Alicia goes to Bible study. Maddie goes to the basement with Jeremiah and learns all of his secrets, etc. Mm-hmm. So Alicia, with 3 other kids from the community, goes into this weird, like, bomb shelter / kid hangout room, and they listen to music and do bong rips and drink moonshine.
Yep.
And quote Bible scripture, but like ironically, and this is breaking some major horror film rules, because while this is going on, and they have the decapitated head of a zombie in a birdcage that they talk to and that they think is a joke. So, by everything we know about the rules of horror, this is all a mistake. Mm-hmm. These are breaking rules of the tropes that we know bind our world together. However, they're playing music during the scene. We Can Be Heroes. It's a remix of that song, and it has none of the threatening sort of undertones, and it seems like literally it's actually a scene of levity. It gets a little serious when the conversation goes to. When we realize that these kids are sheltered and have no idea how to live outside the walls, and Alicia has to be like, dude, you got to take care of yourselves. But what did you think about the fact that it doesn't seem like the show wants us to think that they're breaking these well-known and ironclad rules of horror? Yeah.
I kind of feel like this whole scene is maybe a little bit of a reaction to the criticism that unlike The Walking Dead, and we've seen some seasons that rely or have these moments of levity, but they really are just moments as opposed to full-on weird scenes like this. I think some of the criticism with The Walking Dead is that it's just so serious and depressing, and I feel like this was perhaps an attempt to inject that into it. I was very much bothered by this scene. I kind of got what they were trying to do with it, but I don't know that it was successful necessarily. What do you
think they were trying to do with it?
I think that they were trying to just very much hit home that these were kids that really didn't have any idea what was going on outside of the walls, and therefore feel safe enough to keep this thing in a birdcage. And they've been living a very different existence than Alicia has. Even how they describe, they've been living apparently in this area even before the whole incident, the outbreak happened. So they never had the experience that Alicia did, like fleeing from LA or fleeing, being out there in the wild. And their comments really show how naive and like in some ways innocent they are. I mean, they still feel safe going out here into this bunker on their own. They feel safe getting inebriated and stoned and just like feeling like they're brave with this zombie head in a cage. What bothered me more about this whole scene was Alicia's reaction to it. Mm-hmm. Because she didn't react in the way that I was hoping she would. I mean, I don't know, maybe she just, she took a hit off the bond and maybe she thought it was kind of funny that they were doing this, but the fact that she thought it was I don't know. It gave her a chance to be a kid again, I guess, and I just think it missed the mark because she clearly says, "Look, you guys don't know what it's like out there," and they ask her what she's done, almost like a dare.
Because it's the whole like Jeff wants to know blah bullshit. I didn't really enjoy that mechanic.
I don't know. Did you? I just found it totally implausible that they would be keeping this thing in there and that they would think it was funny. Though maybe they would, I guess, if they were sheltered. I don't know. I just don't feel like Alicia would have reacted this way at all.
So yeah, we've got serious shades of Alexandria here, where on the one hand, these kids know nothing of the outside world, and they're kind of going on as if they're still just able to be teenagers. And they keep a zombie locked up, like Nicholas and Aiden were doing, right? But they kept him outside the walls at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, Alicia's reaction of laughing instead of just saying, "Oh, you guys are idiots," is kind of strange. She does double back later when she's like, "Yeah," because Gretchen's response to Troy and the militia do things that we can't do. We don't know how to. I'm like, how could you? Yeah, this camp needs to have zombies out on the outside of the gates for people to wake up, I guess. I don't know. It's a disappointing kind of sequence, and it's crazy to me that they go all night and they're actually stumbling, falling down drunk or messed up the next morning when they're like walking home, and Jake is coming home from the boar hunt. And it's bananas that anybody in the community would let this happen.
Well, right, and that they would just kind of giggle about it. And I mean, yeah, I guess you need kids to be kids, and maybe this is some of the naivete of this community. But I just don't. It just doesn't seem plausible to me, this whole little scene. And again, I don't feel like Alicia would join in, given what she had seen. And also, given her brother's addiction issues, I just don't buy it. But you know, that was, and let's talk about that all night boar hunt that Nick gets invited to, which is also super weird. You know, like they're going out with these dogs and they're giving them commands in German. They're German shepherds. So and that is typically, you know, so that other people can't command the dogs. That's what they do a lot of the time. But you know, the fact that they have a team of these dogs is interesting. But I don't think Nick's going to go anywhere with Troy, but somehow just goes with him on this boar hunt with no problem. Although Nick is usually looking for an advantage, you would imagine that he would know that his advantage at night with a bunch of people with weapons and dogs is probably not going to be on his side. So I don't know that he would choose to willingly go on this. But he does. And then what do you think about the whole interaction between him and Troy, which is inevitable?
Yeah, so at least he knows that it's coming.
Yeah.
But I don't understand what Troy was trying to do. Do you think was Troy trying to kill him?
I think Troy is super weird. I don't know that he was trying. I think he kind of wants to see Nick's strengths and weaknesses. I don't think Troy rules anything out. I think it's possible, but I think he also likes to play with his food. And scare people and like manipulate people and kind of, you know, we saw what he was doing with Madison and other folks at the base. So I feel like maybe not yet, but I think that he's certainly going to be coming to a head with Nick at some point. So they do this weird thing and they fight, and Nick almost, you know, Nick pretends that, you know, that he's going to kill him, and then he doesn't, though he does have the chance. And then there's this weird giggly scene with him in the journal, and then they're like, Troy's like, we can be friends now. Like that was kind of a weird scene, but I think it's also just showing how, you know, calculating Troy can also be, because he wants something from Maddie. We don't know what yet. Though it's sort of a mother figure, what we were kind of seeing. Though I find this a little bit hard to believe that he would bond with Maddie so clearly, just from what we've seen about his other behavior. If he really is a psychopath, I don't think he really cares about that kind of thing. But, you know, there's definitely a him wanting to take Nick's place kind of feeling going on.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I hadn't put that together. But yeah, he's got mommy issues. He's sleeping in Nick's bed. He's like, let's get rid of this guy. But then Nick manages to win him over by being insane and ripping pages out of his journal. And then he's like, I think we can be friends now, which is very strange. And I don't know if I believe him, but...
I don't believe him, but I mean, at least for the moment, their weird thing is
diffused.
Gone. So there is that. And then what else was going on here?
That was it. That was the end of the boar hunt. Then they have pig meal the next day. And Jeremiah gets the news that the outpost who they'd sent to look into the helicopter shoot down has not checked in what was it, 36 hours? It's actually a long amount of time, which makes me think, okay, 36 hours. So it takes all day to cook a pig. We're basically on track for. They've only been there less than 2 days, and he's like, let's put together a search team. It's going to be led by Troy. That's a great idea. 3 or 4 other dudes volunteer, and then so does Maddie, and everybody's like, oh, she's doing her part. But then she does something really weird and walks over to where Troy's sitting, eating his meal, and sits next to him and puts a napkin on his lap. So yeah, she's playing up this whole... I was like, what the hell is she even doing?
Yeah.
But now, okay, everybody... I don't know why I was so behind on that one. Yeah, she's playing up the mommy issue angle, and she's going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I did like how Jeremiah Otto, even when he was talking about the search thing, basically was like, could be nothing, but we got to like figure it out if it isn't nothing. And, so he's being very moderate in how he presents things to the community I think, so as not to cause a panic. So I think it's interesting seeing that. The other thing about his speech, and especially because Troy is put in charge of this search party, is once again hitting home the fact that where Jake sits in this community. And despite Jake's weird conversation with Troy a little bit earlier in this episode, which, again, I think that's just a huge red flag for what's going to happen to Jake, despite what Jake keeps saying and perhaps thinks, Troy holds a very specific place in this community. So as this... And he is respected, apparently, both by his father. The Christ is Risen kids think he's crazy, but think he's necessary, and that's kind of where his dad comes out on this. But he still, to me, he holds a higher level of a position than Jake does. Again, moderates fail in this community. So I felt like that was kind of a last minute sort of dig at Jake, not deliberately, but just a last minute, I don't know, declaration that where Jake is. And I think we'll see a lot more of that later on. There's a little bit. I
see that. I think that they're definitely using Troy as like a field commander, but it's harder to tell because Jake isn't getting these assignments that make him seem as important, but he's basically holding down the home front. Jeremiah is kind of retired. He's not really the leader anymore. At least he's not supposed to be. He's like trying to abdicate to Jake based on the way that the wake went at the beginning of the episode. So I would just say that, yeah, Troy is definitely the guy that they're sending out on all the missions, it seems like. But I would suggest that Jake is still holding an important role in terms of the overall command of the compound.
Okay, perhaps, but the things that Jake says about Troy, to me, are not necessarily backed up by the things that Jeremiah says about Troy. I mean, Jeremiah is clearly aware of some of the issues Troy has and implies this when he talks to Maddie about it, but he's still giving him a lot of power. Yeah. He is not putting him on a leash, and it seems like Jake sounds like that's what he's doing, but he's not. So anyway, I did enjoy aspects of this episode. I enjoyed seeing a little bit how this community worked. There were definitely tones of Alexandria in here, and in terms of how some of the community feels and is unaware of what's actually happening in the outside world. But there's also tones of the governor with Troy's eye, which is kind of interesting. Okay. So there are definitely like some notes that they're hitting here. I did like seeing how some of the different I don't know, factions of the community and things like that. You get to see that kind of thing. In terms of that stuff with the episode, I feel like we're seeing a lot more. It was more successful to me than many other episodes have been, and definitely more successful than the first two of the season. The one, in addition to Alicia's weird, fun, strange Scooby party in the bunker, the one odd and I felt very much shoehorned in part of this episode was Victor.
Well, and Lucy, but yeah. Victor Strand goes on they do some interesting things with him. So he exhibits that he still has a network that he's trying to exploit.
Yep.
South of the border. I guess he's put in enough time in Mexico, and he knows enough shady businessmen that he's like, this guy's definitely gone to his dam that he must own. I don't know why he would be like, yes, of course. He loved that dam. That's why he would go there. And he goes to this dam and finds his friend Dante, but clearly is not all that good at talking his way into the situation. They do some weird reminiscing about the good old days of real estate businesses, and then he's about to get thrown over the edge of a dam. It's not really clear if Dante was ever actually going to go through with it, because he doesn't seem to really bite at Strand's suggestion that he can help him with finding manpower and transportation, which I don't believe, having hung out with Strand for the last 6 months of the zombie apocalypse. It doesn't appear like a done deal to me that he has any of those contacts and or infrastructure material.
Yeah, I don't know. Strand in this episode, I think the idea that he somehow in his head or knows about all this other stuff going on, it seems a little bit convenient to me as well. Just that he somehow manages to figure out where all this stuff is going on. And also, given his relationships with his business contacts in the past, I don't know that he would have just driven headlong into all of this without being somewhat cautious, trying to find out the lay of the land. I mean, he's not going to know what's going on in Dante's world. He doesn't even know if Dante is necessarily alive. He just kind of rolls up and is like, yeah, what's up? And I know Dante and all this other stuff. I felt like he would have been a lot more cautious, especially from what he's seen elsewhere. And even when he finally sees Dante, I just don't know that he would let his guard down that quickly. And this was the weakest storyline to me, just because Strand knows that he has double-crossed his business partners in the past. He knows that they know this. So I don't know. I feel like if he did enter into this situation, I feel like he would have presented ideas already to Dante instead of what happens to him when they're going to try to toss him over the dam. Then suddenly he's like, oh no, you're in danger, and he's going to show his usefulness then. I feel like he's always aware and always scheming about what the sort of things going on behind the scenes are. Yeah. So I didn't find that this was in line with the Strand that we know as a character. And it felt just very strange and convenient. It's
definitely not the Strand that we first met, where he talks a guy into having a mental breakdown and getting taken away for experiments by the military, right? Right. This guy has not found his footing since Thomas died, basically.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the episode shows him in a jail cell after getting his sentence commuted, because Dante wants him to suffer, because Dante's a good guy who thinks that Strand is a bad guy, apparently, even though he's got a stack of bodies at the bottom of his dam that he's thrown off there that's got to be 50 people deep.
Yep.
So Dante is not a good guy. Sorry, Dante, I hate to break it to you. Strand is probably not the worst guy you've ever come up against. You look in the mirror. And then the water canteen scene at the very end leads us to this reunion of a character that you and I both said, hey, you know what? He might still be alive. We never saw him die. But how do you actually feel now based on this reappearance?
Well, he reappeared, and who we're talking about is Daniel. And I'm not convinced that he's real. Is he real, or is he a delusion?
He's definitely real. I've seen the previews for
okay.
for the next episode.
I have deliberately stayed out of that because I didn't want to get spoiled. But okay, so saying that he's real. No, that's okay. But thanks for spoiling it. Thank you, Mr. Tiven. But no, that was my immediate thought was I wasn't sure if this was just sort of like Strand imagining it. And this is like a voice of his conscience or something, but I love this actor. I think Daniel's an interesting character. I think it's completely implausible that he survived, but
they're going to run into each other at this dam.
But I, okay, so he's back, so I guess we'll have to deal with that. But it's a kind of a weird thing. I also feel like, and we don't know what Daniel's been doing, and we don't know yet what happened to his daughter, but I kind of feel like the Daniel we know would have been searching for his daughter everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out why he's still at the dam and not moving on,
yep.
I guess, tonight. But from what I saw of the teaser, it looks like there's going to be some good backstory on Daniel.
I think so, too. And not even watching the teaser, but now that we know it's real, I think we're going to see more of that. So that I'm not unhappy about him appearing. I'm just unhappy about what they're doing with Strand right now. I really love Victor Strand as a character. I also like this actor, and I just feel like they've been wasting him this season
so far.
So hopefully they will redeem themselves soon. But otherwise, I actually enjoyed this episode much more than I have other episodes of Fear the Walking Dead, despite some of its shortcomings. So I guess we'll see if this trend continues tonight.
Yeah. And maybe we'll see Mercedes Mason come back and reprise Ophelia, because we know that Dayton Callie brought her over the border, so she should be at Brokejaw somewhere, and it's kind of crazy that we haven't run into her yet.
Yeah, because there aren't that many people there, and, I would imagine if you had a new group of people coming in, she'd be aware of that, and she'd know who they were. So
maybe she's out at the outpost, and Maddie's gonna run into her as like the last survivor of the outpost.
That's possible. Look, it's a good call. All right, well, I can't wait to watch it tonight and chat about it with you for next time.
Yeah. Hit us up. Join us back again next time, where we're gonna just keep going through this first part of the season of Fear the Walking Dead. And email us at Gmail, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, reanimatedpcast on Twitter. And our website is reanimatedpodcast.com.
Yeah, so until next time, ciao.
Bye. Thanks for listening.